My name is Michael, and today I'm going to talk with you about Angular and Firebase and how do you do with both of them something that you call multiplayer game. So let's start with what do we need to have in order to have a multiplayer game, any kind of a multiplayer game, and this is going to be the agenda that we're going to talk about. So the first thing that you want to have is you want to have something like a browser, right? We're talking about something online, and we want to have some framework to help us, and we want to have some game framework. So any of you develop a game? Wonderful. Okay, so at the first step of this session, we're going to talk about what is a game framework and what it does and how it does that. And then we will move on to other steps. And that would be that we need something like a real-time server. And of course, we need some database to support it. So this is our agenda. I hope you like it. Okay, so what is a game framework? What do we need? What is different from an Angular app or a traditional Angular app for a game? So the first thing that pops to my mind is the UI is extremely different. You're looking at a common form. You have an input, you have a validation, you have an button. But talking about a game, the UI is completely different. So this is the first thing that we need to challenge. And this is where we want some framework to help us with. And then we have like all kind of physics. We have things moving in my game, and I have objects colliding with one another, and I want to have something to help me interact with one object and another. And if we're all talking about physics, the animation is far more complex from a simple UI, from a simple form. When you're clicking on a button, there is this small animation that the button is pressed and the border is changing. But talking about a game, the animation is more complex. So you have an object moving. And if you would try to understand what is a movement of an object, so let's say that in application, you have a table and you want to drag and drop some file into the table, right? So what you're doing is you're taking some symbol, some icon of your file and just move it around to the table. But talking about the game, you have a movement, and the movement of an object is like the hands are moving, the legs are moving. So animation is more complex, and we need to find some solution for that. And the rendering is far more fast. Having like a slow performing game is simply doesn't work for our users. We need to handle a lot of assets, and we want to have abstraction of the actual way that we render the game. You can render it with Canvas or with WebGL, and you don't want to be like specific to one implementation. You want some abstraction. So this is the list of things that I expect when I'm choosing a game framework. And today we're going to use something extremely, extremely simple. It's called Phaser. The reason I chose Phaser is that it's simple. It's really, really simple. You just see the code, understand the concept. The concept is also simple. And the first time I used a Phaser, we had this POC with a client that we needed to provide them with a game. And we didn't know if they're going to like it, they're going to use it or not. And the interesting thing was, once we provided the game, we didn't know if they are going to launch that or not. And launching that means like 10,000 concurrent users is something like really, really regular for their kind of traffic. So we want something that we could develop fast, but is going to have like quite heavy production. So one of the considerations was I want something simple and easy to learn. So how do we create a game? What do we need to do? So you have 4 phases. The first phase is load your assets and create a meaningful object from those assets. And I know it's a bit confusing right now, but we're going to see it in a second. It will have more sense. Once you have objects that you can actually render and interact with, you have 2 functions that are being called over and over again. Those are the update and render functions. So in the update phase, what I'm doing, I am understanding what has changed in my game. Let's assume the user has, okay, so I'm loading to object, and then I want this player to move along. So in this movement, probably the user did something to make this object move, like use this keyboard, use some touchscreen, and once I got the user's movement, the user pressed the key. This is the phase where I'm updating the location of my object. So if the user pressed like left, move this object to the left. And then the render function will render the change. And this happens over and again. Does this sound familiar to you, update render? Yeah, so do you have a name for that? What is the meaning of update and render cycle? No? So you probably heard the term FPS, frame per second. So to determine what is frame per second, it's actually measuring how many times this update and rendered had occurred within 1 second. So this is extremely important to those of you who are playing. You like to have like high FPS. Well, if the developer didn't do a good work in updating and rendering, so you have a low FPS. So the player moved, it's an illegal move. This is update and render again. And then we want to have something happen and interact with. So this is like another cycle. Okay, so let's see some code. Before I'm going to show you some code, I'm going to show you my game, which is fairly simple. So there is this cat. I think it's a cat. It's a rabbit, it's a cat, I don't know, it's a something. So this animal is, right now it's moving, right? And you can see this movement. And this animation, as I said, it's more complex than a simple UI. I need to be able to move it, and now I would move it to the left, or your right, your left, my right. And you can see that there is this sense that is actually walking. And this is something that would be, if you're trying to think how you're going to implement, like in plain JavaScript, it's going to be quite complex. But using Phaser is going to be like very, very simple. So this is the basic of my game, and I can just kick those birds out. And that's about the game. And we can all join later if we'll have some time. And we'll all be cats which are pushing the birds out. Okay, so I want to have a phaser game, so we're doing something really, really simple here. We are saying what is the width and height of the application, what kind of rendering mechanism do we want, and we want auto, we want a phaser to choose it for us. As I said, it's kind of abstracted. And the ID of the div that we're rendering it in, and all of the functions that we talked about. So we want to start and work with the game itself. So we want to preload, we want to load our assets. And I'm loading here a Sprite Sheet. How many of you know what a Sprite Sheet is? Okay, so I'll show you to those of you who are not familiar with that. So in my folder, I have this animal image. So you can see here that it's like a very, very big image. Each box is an image, and if we were looking at this cat and we were trying to understand how we had this animation, so going left, I have 3 images. Let's zoom in. And using those 3 images, I am creating a motion animation. So when I'm loading the sprite sheet, I'm saying where it's located. And I'm saying that each box is 32 pixels, and I have 89 boxes. So this is the first function where I'm loading my files. Afterwards, I'm doing the create phase. In the create phase, what I'm doing, I'm actually setting up how I want things to interact. So I am doing the physics part. And the physics part is actually saying the physics engine is arcade. You have all kind of engines, and I'm having here an animation. The animation down is 3 images, and I want them to change at a pace of 10, 10 changes per second. And then I want to start play. So when we are starting this, this game is stepping down. And then I want the update. And as I said, the update is part of the interaction with the user. So here I can see that the cursor is left. So right now I am moving to the left. So if I'm moving to the left, I need to do 2 things. First, I want to have animation to the left, and then I want to create an actual movement. And you can see here that I'm setting the x-axis to the left, and I'm using velocity because I want to have like a motion and not like the object jumping from one place to another. I want to create a motion. And those were the 3 functions that I had to implement. And I did set that there is a 4th function that I didn't need to implement. That is because Phaser usually knows how to render the object that is responsible on them. So if you have more complex stuff, maybe you will need to interfere in the rendering phase, but usually it's just out of the box. Cool. So if you want to see the demo, right? So, okay, what we have here? What we have here is an Angular 4 application. Actually, 4 to 5 in this kind of work, it's about the same. So we have here the components themselves, and I have a component called game. And this component consists with all of the game logic. So you can find here everything that we said about how we're doing the preload, the create itself, and you can see here all kind of things that I'm preparing before I'm starting the game, and all of the logic about how to create the movement in the game. For example, if I'm going to the end of my screen, I should stop, right? I can't go out of my screen. So this kind of object can't go out, but if I'm trying to push the bird, it should go out. So I have this logic that I need to create, and this is done in the update phase. Cool. So we are at an NG conference, and why do I need Angular, right? Because Angular actually at this point has almost nothing to do with the game itself. So when we're saying game, we're actually saying an app that most of its features are a game, right? But it's still an application. You still want maybe to have like an application and a loading screen. You may want to have like login, settings. Maybe you want to serve ads because you want to make money out of your game. So all of those things, creating with something that is game-oriented will be like very, very difficult for you. So this is why we want to have some kind of framework, and Angular is like really, really easy to integrate right here. So everything that it's the game itself, Phaser will be responsible for that, and everything that wraps the games is going to be responsible by Angular. So how do you do that? How do you integrate them? So integrating them is kind of simple. Well, Phaser is not an Angular module, so you can just import it and use it. It does set itself as a global script. So what we are doing, we are in our package.json, we are requiring a couple of things. We are requiring Phaser and P2 and few things that needs to be included in order to Phaser to work. And once that is installed, we could go to our Angular CLI and set the scripts to be included. So we need the P2, Pixie, and Phaser. And well, when I was working on this POC and I was looking at what kind of dependencies does Phaser needed, so I just copied from the internet, like, what do I need? And I had like a small change. I first included Pixie, and then P2, and then Phaser. So this will waste you a lot of time. So if you're seeing that somebody had like few steps, do in the correct order. So I'll try to save you some time also. Okay, once that is integrated, I can go to my application, to my component. And in my component, I need to declare that I have Phaser as a public, as a global variable, and you can just go ahead and use that. So if we were looking at the beginning of my demo, I had this login screen, and I'm not good at designing pages, and so this is the best I can do in login. So you can type in your name, and this is Angular, right? This is like plain Angular. You can, it's like really easy to create a login page and then have a route. You can see here that right now I'm at the home screen and the home route, and then I do login, and then my game starts, and I went to /game. And you can see here that I have part which is white and black. So white means Angular, black means that it's Phaser. So if we will look at the code, you will go to the module, and you can see here something really simple. We have two routes, we have a login, and we have the component. You can go to login, and you can see that we're using here some of service, user service, where we are setting the username. Of course, in a real application, maybe you want to validate the user, maybe you want to authenticate or something like that. And after that happened, we are moving to the game, to /game, and in /game, I am getting the service itself injected right here. So this is where I'm binding the application and the game together. And it's really easy to do that because everything is in a component. Just grab your service, take the data you need. If you need to update something, do it in the same way, and then everything looks good. Okay, so until now, what we have a game, but it's like on my private laptop, and it's still not a multiplayer game, and now we want to go ahead and create something that is multiplayer. So what do we need to do in order to have a multiplayer game? So any thoughts? What do we need to have? You're too shy. Just speak up. I'm sure you have some kind of idea. Basefire. Nice. I paid him a lot of money to have this joke. You must laugh now. Oh, thank you. Okay, so first of all, it is a website, so we need to serve static files. This is the first thing. And we do, if we want to have authentication, we need to have some logic. And this is, authentication is like a simple, a specific logic that we may need, but there are tons of logics that we want to have, and we need to run that in production. We want to sync data between players. And maybe you thought about that, maybe you didn't. Maybe we need to scale, right? Game has these trends and they go up and down in traffic, so we need like real auto scaling here. And we need to have a deployment. All of that we need in order to have like a multiplayer game. And if you start to think what it means, what it evolves, it's like a full stack solution with deployment, with auto scaling, like infrastructure, DevOps stuff. It's a lot to do for just kicking birds out of the screen, right? And I want it to be really simple. And let's remember the context, which is POC that I'm not even sure that is going to go live. So it's a lot of things to do, and we need to get them done. And this is where Firebase steps in. And a lot of people think that Firebase is a database, and you're right, it was like a single database, and it's a serverless database. And serverless is a cool thing to say, but what it's actually saying that you don't need to auto-scale. You just put your users into the database and start working, and it's somebody else's responsibility. And this specific case, it's Google's responsibility. So we have a real-time database using that, and we'll see that in a second. It's so easy to work with. It's just started work, and it's flying. It synchronizes between the user using WebSockets. Cool. So let's start seeing how it's look like. So this is Firebase. And in my Firebase, I can see that I have a lot of things. I have authentication, database, storage, hosting, functions, and a bunch of other things. So here in my database, I can see that I have like all of my data. So this is ngVikings, and those little things that you saw, the birds, are enemies. And here you can see where they are found. So this is the database, and if I'm going to, let's try and see that. So I want to refresh here. Cool. And you can see that they were updated. So green means that something had updated. So this is real live changes that you can see. Cool. So we're initially the database. We are getting the list that we're interested in, right? There is like a lot of players that I want to see where they're at, and I want to get this list, but I need to get subscription every time they are changing. So how we do that? In my model, I am initializing my connection to Firebase. At this spot, this is something that now everybody can go and grab and use, and I need to delete it afterwards. But this is the place that I'm connecting my app to Firebase. And after I did that, I want to get notifications. So when I am doing an update, it's not that one, it's the other one. Cool. So right here, I am saying, please give me all of the enemies that you can find, and I am doing subscribe. Subscribe means every time there is a change, you are going to get a notification. So a few things about the production that I had. First of all, that means a lot of traffic. If you are doing this like that, that means that, and you have like 10,000 concurrent users, you are going to get all of the 10,000 changes every time there is a change, right? So you might want to pass here some query to be more specific to the data you are interested in. And don't forget to close this connection, because you are going to get notification even if you went to another page in the UI. So you want to be able to make sure that you're saving the traffic and not like wasting that too much. Once you get the data, go in the data, understand the logic that you want to implement, and just implement it. Cool. So doing Firebase and connecting to it, it's really, really simple. Firebase is like really, really inviting, and Firebase is Google, and Angular and Google, it's Google, so it's connecting really, really easily. And then we have like something really, really simple with Firebase. And we have the data, but this is kind of naive to say that that solves it. We want to have two more things, right? We said that we want to have static website serving, and we want to have some other logic. So how do we do that? We want our application to be served in public. So what we are doing here, we are using the Firebase CLI. And using the Firebase CLI, you can do cool stuff like going here. And you can see that I said that hosting means static website serving. And I said that you can please publish to the public the dist folder. And then if you want to ignore from something, you can just go ahead and do that. So what you can do, you are going to say Firebase deploy only hosting. And what it does right now is actually deploying my application to Firebase. And once this deployment is done, we can have like an URL that we can access, and it's like in public. So let's see that. You can see here that we have a URL waiting for us. And right now here in this hosting, you can see that I did like 2 deployments. there is the old one and there is the current one. And here I can do rollback and things like that. So think of the mechanism that if you wanted to have that and you needed to implement it yourself, you're talking about deployment, you're talking about CDN that you get here for free, you're talking about rollback, all of these things, it's things that you need to take care and you got out there for free. And of course, you can have your own domain if you want to have that. And once we did that, our application is live. Now you can go ahead and grab this URL and start work with that. And that is like almost ready. We still want something, right now we have like something real naive. We have the game and we have database and that is it. I don't have any place that to put some logic into it. So there is this function which is simply Google Cloud Serverless Functions. So you can put functions here, and again, it's really, really easy because you have the functions folder, and here you can have simply a function that you want to deploy to Google. And this is like Node.js, extremely simple, functions, HTTP. Once you get a request, go to request, see in the body, if the username is Viking, return you're awesome. If not, you're not so awesome. Not so awesome. So from here to being in production, you're talking about doing functions. And that is it. Now this function is going to be deployed. We're talking about a function that deploying is a one console away for deployment. And you're talking about something that scales to as long as you pay enough. So it's a really, really awesome things to have. Again, you can see here, now we have a URL. We can grab this URL, go to Postman, put it in, like, say, Viking 1. You are not so awesome. But if you would go with Viking, you will get the actual logic that we expected. You're awesome. OK, so once we did that, my animation is a bit. So once we did that, we have everything that we need. You have the game itself. You have a database syncing all of your data between your users. You can serve the game using CDN, and you can have any custom logic that you have using serverless functions. And this is about everything that you're gonna need. You can have other stuff such as storage, and in this storage you can put, I don't know, images, things like that that you're gonna need for a game. And I think it's worth saying that Firebase offers a lot of other features that go along with this game. Like, I want to collect data about performance, about crashing. Those things, usually when you have like heavy production, it's really, really interesting to know and to understand. And you usually use other tools, but here it's like all integrated. And of course, we're talking about analytics, so integrating analytics, and you have most analytics that you want to have, you have here, and it's already implemented in Firebase, so you just like include the script and you got it. It's far more advanced than Google Analytics, for example. But the really cool part is the grow part, because a lot of time when you're trying to do something, to convert a user to do something, you want to have data about this user. You want to know that this user already saw I don't know, to purchase some item, and he clicked cancel. So I know that this user is interested in buying something, and offering discount is really, really smart thing to do. But I, as a developer, I need to manage a lot of stuff. I need to collect a lot of data. I need this data to be available for me. So I had this cool thing called remote config. So remote config is something that is accessible to you during your runtime for a specific user. And you can start, just set this data in this configuration, just set it. And then later you can do stuff according to this configuration. So let's say I want to push notifications. So I'm setting that this user did something in my application, so I can just go and use that. Unfortunately, the growth part is mostly used for mobile apps, and not everything is still open to the web. Hopefully, it will change, and we could have like more advanced stuff in also in the web. So. This was my talk. I hope you enjoy it. And thank you.